caring of the children through supporting parents. But how to do that? And I will be sharing our expertise on this with you today, as far as time is available. But first, let me introduce 3 colleagues that are involved in this project as well. My co-trainers for the upcoming training in parenting groups, family groups. First of all, Julia Bala. Maybe she's well known to most of you, but Julia, can you say a few words about your expertise?
Well, I have been working like 25 years with traumatized children and families. And since also in our national Psychotrauma Center, when Trudy and Marlus, who would be introducing herself, work. And since I am retired, I'm mostly working in preventive programs, also with 3D other colleagues, where I mostly focused on how to strengthen the resilience of families and how to support good parenting in troubled times. Besides that, I do some training also for colleagues in Ukraine. And I'm very glad that you are all today here with us.
And my second colleague, that which I want to introduce, and then we'll get over to the contents, is also a very nice colleague with whom I work a lot in family groups, family-oriented work. Marloes, can you say a few words about your own work?
Hi, I am Marloes. I'm a mental health psychologist and a relationship therapist. And I'm specialized in working with children, parents, and families who have experienced stress, hardship, traumatic events in their lives. I'm a colleague of Trudy and Julia, and I'm honored to be here this evening with you. I hope to see some of you in person when we're coming to Poland and Slovakia. And I always try to search for some playfulness during difficult times, because I think playfulness is the way we learn and we carry through difficult times. Well, I'm looking forward to meeting you.
Thank you, Marloes. Thank you, Julia. So first of all, the plan for today is working with families in groups. Why? And if you think that's a good idea, how are you supposed to do this? And then more concise with regards heading towards the training that we're organizing. What could be a good program for families? What is our experience in doing that? And then what does it mean, the training of facilitators? So that will be in the second part of my presentation. Like I promised, first something about ARC and Centrum 45. And I think that is very much related to why. I think all of us are confronted nowadays a couple of times a day with the very dramatic visuals of what's happening in the Middle East, and before that and besides that, with other conflict areas in the world, among which Ukraine since last year. In ARC Centrum 45, in contrast to what the name Centrum 45 is maybe indicating, Centrum 45 was developed or originated as a late response to the Second World War in the Netherlands. Only in 1974, the acknowledgement and awareness that people were still suffering from mental health disorders and symptoms related to the war experiences was fully there. And it was in particular because of the resistance fighters and the support for the resistance fighters that Centrum 45 was erected. One of the major groups that were clients in Centrum 45 were the people that had survived the Japanese occupation in the former Dutch East colony, the former Dutch East Indies, Indonesia nowadays. My career as a researcher and a clinician started at this time when there was when there was much interest for the children who had lived through these internment camps, subsequent migration to the Netherlands, and acculturation and adaptation processes later on. Not only was it the large population of clients that had survived the former Dutch East Indies and the Japanese occupation and subsequent revolution period, also their children constituted a large group of clientele that still until today apply for help in our center. So now let me first describe ARC Centrum 45. ARC Centrum 45 is a mental health institute for specialized diagnostics and therapies related to psychotrauma, traumatic events, and many of them have also experienced migration. I think refugees constitute half of our clientele population. Other populations are professional traumatized people like police officers, journalists, Red Cross employees, military veterans, or military personnel themselves. So I think every specific vulnerable group for undergoing traumatic stress experiences and consequences could be referred to ARC trauma of ARC Centrum 45. So this is Centrum 45, but Centrum 45 is one of the institutes underneath ARC. ARC is the umbrella organization, also capturing other trauma-related institutes. Other related institutes are offering policies or first responding activities in the aftermath of crisis, or for instance, ARC International in post-conflict and conflict areas. So one could say that ARC, among which ARC Centrum 45 is originated and directed at offering psychosocial services and improving these services, so also doing research in the field of psychotrauma in a very broad sense. Now back to our topic for today, because why family groups, and then given the history of ARC Centrum 45. ARC developed more individualized therapies and also did research. So we witnessed an increasing and amounting evidence for individualized therapies for psychotrauma. In the meantime, this post-war generation group of clients was growing and has been substantial ever since the beginning of ARC Centrum 45. So even though, as it is defined by post-war, these were people born right after the war, who had parents that were that had survived war circumstances, but they had not been subjected to war experiences themselves. So how come that child survivors still suffered from mental health consequences so many years, 50 years, 60 years after the end of the Second World War, but also how come people were referred to our institute that had not survived the war themselves, but were raised by parents that were subjected to war experiences. That made us focus on the experiences within families. So not only focusing on the individual coping with traumatic stress, but also in the intergenerational consequences of traumatic stress. Time is limited for now. I can't go into all the work that has been done in that area at the end of the last century. For instance, by Yale Danieli, who put a lot of effort to acknowledge the intergenerational consequences of the Holocaust. But other initiatives were there as well. And I think the literature raised, again, much attention to these intergenerational aspects when the refugee population grew worldwide. So recently there is more acknowledgement not only of psychotrauma that is occurring, that is prevalent in children, in small children, in larger children, and in adolescents, but also within families, among families, and parent-child relationships are damaged or are at a disadvantage when parents suffer from mental health consequences of war. So displacement and parenting, what can be said about it? I already mentioned that there's a higher prevalence of mental health problems among refugees in general. By now, more and more research is coming to the open that is being published, that parenting is also being undergoing trouble, is being at a disadvantage when there is long-lasting and severe stress. It can undermine positive parenting, while at the same time positive parenting is a protective shield. Children really need, in troubled times, their caregivers to be there for them and to soothe them, to help them coping with all these overwhelming emotions. So strengthening the well-being, resilience, and positive parenting will also enhance the well-being and positive adjustment of children. So this is the background, actually, of our team members, that against the background of the developments within ARC Centrum 45, our team really underlined the importance of supporting children by supporting the parents, by acknowledging that the traumatic stress has consequences for the parenting behaviors of caregivers, and thereby and through that also impacting the well-being of children. Children need their parents to be able to control, to regulate their emotions, so for them to be regulated themselves. So cumulative distress of parents will lead to a decrease of emotional availability and of parental self-efficacy, maybe a little bit illustrated by the picture on the right hand, and it will increase parental stress and harsh parenting. You can, think of parents that undergoing a lot of stress. They don't have the rest, the calm brain to take a deep breath and to be calm towards their children. This is an example. I can share the slides, but this is an example of a YouTube video clip that pictures that very clearly, how parental calmness and parental guidance is really helping children to build their brains, and literally to build their brains, to build all the connections that they need to interact with the world and to grow, and to grow into autonomous and interactive young human beings. We created this graph based on several reviews that are out there in the literature. And here are some factors that are influencing parental well-being, which in itself is influencing child's well-being. So you could see, and maybe for now these are very well straightforward factors, but there are parental trauma and stressor-related symptoms. In general, there is how more you are experiencing of violence or intrusive events, the worse of the more impact, but the more negative impact these are having on parental well-being. And this is maybe interesting for today. The mechanisms are not yet entirely understood through which parental well-being has an influence on child's psychosocial well-being, in particular in the face of exposure to violence and disruption of environment. But parenting behavior is a factor, but also physiological processes, and research is contributing to that. Attachment is a large word, entailing the bond between adults and children. and also reflecting parent-child interaction, but also the family as functioning as a whole is contributing to the child's well-being. Family functioning as a whole is also incorporating the role of siblings, for example, and not only the role of siblings or persons within the family, but grandparents, neighbors, uncles, and teachers may be not part of the family, but also very influential to a child's well-being. So the whole idea is that we need to strengthen resilience and positive parenting if we want to help children cope with distress in bad times. What does it mean to strengthen resilience and foster positive parenting? First of all, the first step I would say is normalizing and externalizing stress and its consequences. Like in individual cases, it's not you who is having abnormal responses. The responses to abnormal events are normal. It's also important, and that will come back in our program that we want to offer to parents, is understand and acknowledge the impact that stress is having on parenting behavior. Parenting behavior is not on the side; it's it's the core activity that that most caregivers exercise and do. For it to be resilient, a parent needs to be able to manage stress and regulate emotions. Easier said than done. So part of our program is also some activities that help practice how to manage stress when times are bad. And what is emotional regulation? What kind of opportunities are there exactly? And then through that, enhancing positive parenting and parent-child relationships. Marloes was emphasizing the importance of having fun and having pleasure activities. And it's so crucial to elicit these fun, these positive interactions between parents and child, also in times of trouble. When it's not so apparent that it's easier or that it's time to have fun, but within family group activities, it is very important to create an atmosphere where it's possible to also have fun. For children, it's so important to also see that their parents are relaxed once in a while and that they are able to cope. Children need to see that their parents are able to cope. So, yeah, if we outline what we want to achieve and what our goals are, then the next question is, how can this be done? And we have acquired our skills and knowledge by learning from the work by Aya Ase and his group in the United Kingdom. And they were working with families also in difficult circumstances. If they wouldn't improve their functioning as a family, then youth care would take their children away. So it was a kind of 5-4-12, like we said. This is right directly translated from Dutch. I'm sorry for that, but it was an urgent situation. And that was appealing to us because we were working with families that were never in a very easy situation and context. There were so many factors complicated their situation. So how to work according to a structured and systematic way, we were very interested in learning about that. And how to work with the parent-child interaction and a family as a group or as a team. That was what we were looking for. So this is what I'm now going to present about the how. And of course, I can only give you the highlights and maybe you have questions later on. But they're both intervention family groups, but now I will talk about preventive family groups. So I'm not going to talk about therapy. I'm going to talk about strengthening resilience and early intervention family groups, how to support families getting on in times of crisis. So one of the characteristics is also working with parents and children together, strengthening parent-child relationships, family functioning, and increasing social support. Because, as you may be very familiar with these socio-ecological circles of Bronfenbrenner, it's not only the child within the family that matters, but other systems are around that could be helpful as social support resources as well. I choose here a picture of a girl arriving with her dog. I think since the migration, the fleeing of so many Ukrainian people since last year, we've never seen so many pets arriving with the refugees. And I think I was really struck by that, and I think really that's really a very important and positive aspect. So how? Answering the how. Family groups ideally are consisting of 6 to 8 parents. If you have, or families. If you have 2 families, it's not a group. Because why do you, and if you have 10, it's chaos. So you want to have a group that is easy to work with, but that brings along sufficient contrasts, but also enough commonalities. They need to be, quote unquote, in the same boat. They need to recognize the same problems, and they need to also identify in themselves or among each other that, yes, I can learn from this person. They understand my situation. So using commonalities and contrasts are important. You cannot be too different, because then you won't learn from another parent or you won't learn from another family. But you can't be too similar, as we sometimes see in groups of veterans or military, that they are so much alike. They start thinking like, I don't need to explain. You explain my situation without me needing to formulate what is happening. So you also need contrasts. Otherwise, it won't be interesting. Learning from others is very important. The facilitators are sitting on their hands. And what do I mean with that? They take a back seat. They are responsible for organizing all the learning experiences and the activities, but they're not in the fore. Families support other families, and the role of the facilitator is facilitating these exercises. And that is a responsible role. You need to think of activities beforehand, and the aims are clear and outlined beforehand. All the activities and interactions are oriented at strengthening positive experiences and coping. And in the end, we aim for, yes, I can, restoring and strengthening trust and self-efficacy in parenting. Being a parent, and I don't know how many of you are parents, you know your child the best, and you don't want to feel, like you're blamed for wrong behavior, or you want to be confident. You want to feel confident in your parenting. Every one of us want to create the best for the children. Well, just a brief picture about we called these preventing groups that we have offered in asylum seeker centers in the Netherlands and in 2 communities where groups of refugees just resettled. We called it FAME, with a remembrance of this television program, which was very creative and used a lot of music and dancing by young people in the 80s, last century, but also it is an abbreviation of family empowerment. Just for me to strengthen family empowerment, that is what we aim for. That is very important. I'm still talking about the how. How can we achieve this? One of the important steps is also differentiating between what can and what cannot be changed. For instance, in these groups in the asylum seeker centers, we couldn't change the legal procedures. So it didn't make much sense to talk to a large extent about these legal procedures. But acknowledging that they exist, and then make a next as a subsequent step, make a decision. What are we focusing on? What is within our control is a helpful step. And these may be small changes, also oriented at yes, I can. One of the important dynamics, I think, in working with these parent-child interactions, supporting the relationships, is mentalizing. And mentalizing, you know, there are so many words to express what is mentalizing. Empathy could also be a word. Curiosity is related. It's referring to having one's mind in mind. It's what parents, caregivers, and babies do intuitively, automatically, reading the child's mind and giving what it's offering what is needed. But also two grown-ups, two best friends are mentalizing. But this mentalizing capacity is reflecting the activity to improve the interactions between two persons, in particular, a caregiver and a child. A caregiver is responsible for offering the child what he or she needs, and therefore reading these needs adequately. So, how? Yes, we can say, I agree, that is important. But what does this mean for the program for families? If we organize these family groups, what will the families experience? Well, here's a brief outline with 7 steps of what is the build-up, what is the piling up of or the sequence of different subjects. Like it's important to know that it's working with families and in a group. So it's working with families in a group setting. So both of the entities matter. And like any other group, you start with getting to know each other. What are the expectations? Exploring difficulties, resources, but also what are the group rules? What are the group agreements to create it a safe environment? For instance, you will work with all the families to establish as a group rule that listen to each other, respect each other. Usually children come forward with all these expressions and rules because they have been practicing that at school. So, and you write them down, and this is really creating a safe environment, and it's very important to also stick to these. Then we continue with stress, coping with stress, the impacts of stress on family life, parenting, sometimes in 2 different or 3 different environments. What does it mean? How to adapt? What are the difficulties? What are the differences? We go forward to positive parenting, also entails social network and closure, and possibly this happened in the communities of the Netherlands. There were questions by the families because they were newly settled about the social map. Which agencies, which institutes are there to help them out for what kind of questions, and there were also questions with regard to school. And parallel, there is a program that goes parallel to what parents experience for the children. It's good to know, and let me see, no, it's not on this one. There is a structure. So every session you start with parents and children together, and you also end with parents and children together. In between, you can divide the time between 2 subgroups or 3 subgroups if you have 3 different age groups. But so you work with parents and you work with children, and sometimes you work with families. So but now that I'm saying this, I hope you realize that you can be very flexible. Depending on what you want to achieve, what you want to aim for, you can choose the structure that you want to work with. And here's an example. I was too quick. This is a metaphor of coping with stressors. On the one hand, and when it's when you want to acknowledge all the stressors that are being faced, First of all, there's this bucket. There's a Dutch saying that the bucket is overflowing with problems. And then we have the treasure box opposite to it, reflecting all the resources that are there. And here you see some of the examples that families came forward with. But the treasure box is not so culturally sensitive. The Eritrean population, the Eritrean group, came with this jewelry basket, and they found that more culturally appropriate. So this is just as an illustration that you can choose whatever metaphor is working for the group that you are working with or that you think of. Here's another example. We asked families to draw an animal reflecting the strengths that their family that they recognize as a strength within their family. And maybe you right away have an idea, but this was a mother and son, and they were living in a community and they didn't have civil status, legal status yet. So they maybe had to leave the country. And this mother drew a spider, and her son drew a web. And she drew a spider. Why? Because the spider is building a new home wherever she goes. So if she has to leave the place, she will create a new home. And besides, she may look like threatening, but in the meantime, that has a function. It has the function of having 8 legs and being everywhere, being very flexible and all over the place, but also protecting her child. So this is an example of a creative way of working towards strengthening resilience. But then again, like I said with the last example, it's up to you to think of what is appropriate. And maybe you are already doing this. What is appropriate for a certain group of families in a certain environment? And here are some examples, and the children of the Eritrean family group on the pictures here on this slide wear a crown, and they pass on the crown to their neighbor in the circle. And once they have or wear the crown, it's the last part of a session, they are asked, what if you were the king of the Netherlands? What would be your policy? What do you want to change first? So again, an example of a creative way of working with all kinds of aims that you have. We did, just for your knowledge, and I'm really hoping that the interpreters are okay with my speed of speaking, but we did do process evaluations of the programs that we offered. And for those interested, they are out there and I can send them to you. It's not perfect. We're also trying to discover how to have a supportive program for parents and families in displacement, and how to do that in an effective and supportive way. What parents themselves gave us back as evaluations was that they appreciated to be together with other parents, to have the ability to exchange experiences, for instance, and in particular about parenting. They also appreciated the relaxed, kind, and respectful attitude from the team. So that was, we could take that as a compliment. And they were helped by navigating the local social map, practical and medical issues. This was specific for a community where, for instance, not all of the participants already had a family doctor. Well, they also wanted to learn more about your disciplining your child without hitting. This is, I think, a cross-cultural returning issue. Disciplining your child without hitting is the rule in the Netherlands, but not all cultural groups acknowledge that, and they have learned not to talk about it because they know that it's a different rule and a different strategy. But in that way, changes won't be made. Changes will only be made from within. So that is our orientation, to help families make changes in their responses to the changing surroundings and environment from within and with each other. Well, they wanted to have a group for teenagers, a different group, and we can talk maybe a little bit more about that. I'd like to go towards the end. A quote by a mother: "I noticed that my own experiences and upbringing are not sufficient to raise my kids in two cultures. It has been helpful to exchange experiences with others." And a father expressed, "Everything has been addressed with a good reason. This program should be offered to every refugee." Now, these were nice quotes that I share with you. Trust me, there were also other quotes, but just for you to have an idea right now. So what does it mean for the URISE program and the training that we want to offer to facilitators of family groups? This is what we aim for: training of 24 to 30 helpers in Poland and Slovakia. And we are organizing and planning such a training in these two countries. And we think of 25 maybe people in each group. That is, I think, feasible to work with. And so for you to have an idea how to work with families and to be able to practice, we have a learning by doing principle. So it's not only sitting and learning, but it's really also performing these activities while in the training. And the training, it will be directed at knowledge, skills, and self-care. We fully realize that self-care is very important. Maybe participants are parents themselves, but maybe they are also refugees themselves, and need also the acknowledgement of their own situation. So very practical training of facilitators of family groups. We are aiming to organize this the first week of December, and most of the times there will be the question, for who is this meant? And we generally, as our trainers in the UK have shared with us, basically feeling comfortable in working with a group. That is important, because a group can be, consisting of more than 20 people, but also have some experience with children and families. So have some experience with family dynamics, knowing what it is to be a parent, but also understanding or having learned about parental experiences is the requirement. You don't need to be a psychologist. You don't need to be necessarily a social worker. A teacher could also participate. So having some basic understanding, more than knowledge about family life, is actually a requirement and the inclusion criteria. Now, I think I mentioned a couple of times already, 20 to 25 participants in each group would be perfect and would be really nice to be able to work with. If you're interested, Katarina was in the beginning addressing you, and there will be more outlets on how to sign up for through social links of URISE through this training in the near future. Here are some resources that we've used that have been informative to us and that we've written throughout the recent years. And here are some pictures of some of the publications and the manuals that we wrote. And finally, thank you for your attention. Thank you for, I hope you found it interesting. And here are our email addresses. Together we are responsible for this part of the URISE project. Shall I stop sharing my screen?
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Trudy, for this presentation. And I hope to see and hear a lot of questions, because I think this topic, for at least for me, I learned a lot today, and I've heard a lot today for the first time. So I would invite our participants to put their questions into the chat, but even more, I would encourage you to open your mic and turn on your camera and raise your questions. But before we will start the discussion, I just put in the chat the social media of the project. And as Trudy already mentioned, you will get more information about the trainings and how to join in each country in our social media very soon. I as well would like to invite both Julia and Marloes maybe to add something to this presentation if you have additional comments to say.
I'll be very short.
And Julia, you are muted.
What I try to say that I want to be short to leave time for your questions. But what I would like to add is that this method is have a principle, and that is create the context for the problem. And that means that it is really flexible to adjust to the situation the parents or families are in. And the other thing is that it is focused on empowering. And what makes empowering possible is that each family actually have resources to cope with difficult things, even if they are depleted to stress, but they can be enhanced. And why we believe also in that, because we explore, for example, the coping methods of people. They share many of them with each other, and the more coping strategies one have, the better one can cope, for example. So that is also something which helped, and what helped us when our families say, but the situation is so difficult that it's impossible, that we still believe that even if the circumstances cannot be changed, one can change the reactions. And what Froma Walsh, a family therapist, said, which helped me also a lot always, that resilience can be formed and enhanced even when problem cannot be solved. That was my part. Marloes.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I see others as well. Yeah, Marloes, please go ahead.
I will add. Well, I was thinking about what other parents, when we did these groups, I worked with groups with veteran families, and there are a lot of different reasons why families attend the groups, but a lot of the parents, they ask me the question, what do I tell my children? When there are difficult questions, or when there are questions I don't even know my own answer, what is there to tell? And how to find the balance between, the urge as a parent to protect the children from stress and hardship, but also to give meaning to what's happening all around them. And I think working with a multi-family group is powerful, because the parents can talk to each other. Okay, how do you do this, and what is there to tell and what not to tell, and how to give this meaning, and what's inside the head of my child. So I think it's a gentle way of finding out, okay, what is there, what would help us as a family and help our child or children.
Thank you so much as well for bringing this extra target population, right? So the families of the veterans, or maybe even in our context, active service members. Because this is an important target population to support, and we can learn. And I have recently seen several groups being organized in Ukraine for this target population, and I was so happy that it is, going on and taking place, and then we can, exchange experience in our community of practice, for example, for those who have been working with families outside Ukraine and somebody working in Ukraine. So it's always very nice to have those dialogues happening. And I see several people open up a video, and I wonder whether Olena Hrinicka, maybe you want to comment or ask a question.
Доброго дня. Можна українською, так?
Olena, please choose.
Olena is going to ask a question.
Так.
Нормально? Так, чути, так? Мені б дуже приємно.
Well, I'm very pleased, first of all, to attend this seminar, and this is an excellent information and very valuable information, because I am working in the foundation, and we had an idea that the idea was to give assistance only to the children, but we came to a conclusion that it's necessary to work with the families, and we face a lot of difficulties. And the mental health is deteriorating, and all these protective mechanisms which worked at the beginning of the war and now are being depleted, and these resources are depleted, and the families need this support. They need the family groups and the parental groups, and we are talking about it all the time, but unfortunately the preparation of the program is a very slow process, and they distance the children and the parents. But here I'm very pleased to learn about the program, which works with the family at large, as a unit, as an entity. And we understand that the children and parents are inseparably connected, their experiences, and we are trying to find and develop the mechanisms and of the interaction, and we are trying to develop some exercises, but this is a very difficult process. So if this project is going to be implemented, I will be happy to participate, and because we have a lot of difficulties in this area, and we are trying to do it on our own. Thank you. We could change. We could present our experience as well. But I have only one question: when when are you going to come? And we would like to have more opportunities like this. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much, Elena. It's really nice to hear that the need is there. And yes, so you were already thinking how to develop the program yourself. And we came up with the good news that it was developed, it was tested, it worked well with other populations, it will be available. I wonder whether we have other participants willing to ask a question or give a comment or share challenges as well. That is very welcome. Yeah, maybe, I wonder, maybe some of you who open up the camera, Sasha or Valeria, maybe you want to. I know that at the beginning, the audience is very, very shy, but towards the end, we cannot stop people asking questions, a discussion going so well. And it's such a pity that, the time is running. So I wonder whether, Sasha, you have any questions, or Valeria, maybe you have.
I don't have questions yet. I'm from an organization which helps in Germany families with members with disabilities. We help them to relocate and then settle here. We're looking into organizing a peer help group, peer support group, but we're not there yet. So we're in the research stage at the moment, but it was very useful. Thank you very much. That's very inspiring. Lots of information.
Thank you so much for sharing like where you work and with what type of population you work. I wonder whether any Trudy, Julia, Marluz, do you have experience working with families with disabled children? And what maybe will be your approach if you would receive this request, whether you will put only families with disabled children in the same group, or you would mix them with families with other, with more diverse?
It's an important question, and Julia and I and two other colleagues have worked, and maybe some of the colleagues are here in the room, Zoom room as well. But we have worked with early childhood centers since March last year, and they are offering services throughout Ukraine for children, for families with children with a disability. And some of them started having parents joining each other and offering group sessions with creative activities by themselves. And sometimes they used activities that we shared through our online meetings, and but they changed it and added some of theirs to that. Listening to their experiences was very inspiring also. So they brought parents, mothers, most of the times together. Sometimes the children came along, not always. So this is Ukraine related. Another experience that I have is organizing family groups in the West Bank. And also for families where there's a child with a disability. The disability could be a physical disability, but could also be autism or any other disorder or complexity. And they really found it useful to have parents together. Also for very practical reasons. Where can I get a wheelchair? What is a best school to go to with this particular child? So they would advise each other also on taking care of a nice, what I thought was a very nice example is that these group grew out to be very powerful, strong groups. So when one of the mothers couldn't join the group in the city hall, the community offered facilities in the city hall for them to meet, they would go to her house and then meet over there. They would organize group outings together, also for themselves and the children to have a nice time out. So there what was happening, and this is also why I think we can continue with also developing this work, is that they were really strong in having and supporting parents together. But the parents thought it was kind of burdensome when children would be there around this group of parents, of mothers most of the time, and demanding attention. For instance, I want to go home, or I don't like it anymore. I want to. And so to be aware that also the kids, there's an opportunity to also work with the kids, however difficult their behavior may be, is that was something that needed attention still. So I think that's important to keep on improving the work, and there's so much power in working with more than one family member in a group.
May I add only, I have been working for several years with children with disabilities in former Yugoslavia before I came to the Netherlands. And I think that also with the families and the parents, And I think what makes a big difference with other parents, that they have a parental stress because of having a child with disabilities, and then the war-related stress, displace-related come upon of them, so the accumulation can be stronger. And I think that my hunch is that maybe it's better to do the group with parents, with children with the disability, so they can really support, exchange their experiences that can be sometimes quite different than from parents who don't have. Even though I liked very much the idea when you mentioned the possibility of combination, but I think that it's important that someone can contain their troubles, and they can create a very, very powerful group. And agreeing with Trudy on experiences of empowering, and that also sometimes combined in the children. For example, we did groups, and I didn't know at that time that it's a multi-family group, but even with autistic children, with more with parents. So I think it's possible, and it's rewarding.
And maybe if I may ask a question, because like you mentioned you mentioned that you might have families when you have parents and children at the same time in the group, and as I understood from the slide, sometimes you might have only parents as a support group, and then for example adolescents might have their own group at the same time with another facilitator. Am I right? Or like, what are the constellations of those groups, if I may ask? And Trudy, you are muted.
Yeah, that was a good remark. I'm muted. But no, that's such an important question. Actually, you're very flexible in organizing and working with a complete group or with subgroups or with families. But adolescents, you know, they have I think that's typical for that age. Doesn't matter where they live, is that they live close to their parents, but they're not, you know, in their sight all the time. So I think it's also realistic to for them to also have their own space. Yeah, and for parents it may be very difficult to raise, or to, and in particular in wartime or being displaced, to raise adolescents. And they may feel the need to learn from each other without the presence of the adolescents. So I think specifically for adolescents, it's good for them to have a pizza or a cola or a listening to music moment, and you use such an environment to work with that group. But part-time, you can also connect them maybe once in every, once every session you organize a joint session. So you're actually very flexible in doing that.
And it's the power of multi-family therapy, that you sometimes sit together with everybody all together, and sometimes you sit together with one family on this table, the other one on the other, and all the families together, and sometimes you have all the mothers together. So you mix this because you get different information and different things that you different activities. So it depends, and it's helpful. And sometimes it's like you have the parents and the children separated, but then they come together, and the children, they will do like a short interview with a microphone and tell what they spoke about, and the parents will say this as well. And this is, I think it's very powerful because it helps parents to differentiate what is there that I do together with my children, what is there what I take care of myself.
Yeah,
I see other hands, but that's I think is the beauty of this therapy.
Yeah. So as I mentioned at the beginning, there's always a hesitance. Like four people, like 2 in the chat and 2 raise your hands, but please let me then move from one to another. And we have a question in the chat. And please, if you want to ask your question in Ukrainian, we have an interpreter and we will hear your question in English. And I wonder whether Tatiana Feshuk, you want to ask your question aloud, or if there's any problem and you cannot, I can read it for you, no problem.
There are 2 hands also.
And then we will move to those 2 hands. Yeah. Okay, so I will read the question from Tatiana. How do you motivate parents to participate in those programs if parents themselves are overwhelmed with stress and tired by external circumstances?
yes. Also really good. I think starting a group is 3/4 of the work, actually. And you'll know when a group, has started, and it will run automatically and by itself. But to get it started, to invite people, a teaser evening information hour is helpful. So just, invite people to bring others, have a leaflet with the program, the dates, the sessions, the dates, and the location. Share it and explain, introduce yourself, let them introduce themselves, and low barrier accessible information exchange is helpful. And there are good experience with parents sharing their experiences from an earlier group to have key persons to a new group to be organized. In my experience, it's starting the group that is, I think, most of the work, actually, just because of the reasons that were given as examples. Julia and Marloes, what do you think?
Well, I think also that it's important that we ask also what are their needs, what are their expectations, and somehow we create also the sphere as it's in the group so that they experience that it will not be something very heavy, but it would be a kind of playful way to deal with difficult problems.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then again, Julia, the Eritrean mothers didn't understand why we were playing games. They thought that was not useful. So this management of expectations, once we explained a little bit more why we were doing what we're doing, they were okay and they understood. But this management of expectations is very important, to have really clear goals that are adjusted to their needs. Yeah.
And I think it's helpful to address that it's about support. It's not about feeling overwhelmed with all the stress. It's really about building on strengths, and I think it's important in families that they know this, because there are always worries. Is this something that will be helpful? And in the end, when they attend, they say, okay, we need to tell other families because this was such empowering for them as parents and for their children. But it takes a hurdle to start and to attend.
And I have heard that, for example, for other groups in the Netherlands, you have started almost like in a short period of time when they arrived. So they probably were overwhelmed with all kind of practical questions and, hearing from others was very important, and what Olena raised, right? So that there is an ongoing, continuous stress, and there might be other requests for those parents if they are residing for a longer time. But Olena, maybe you can as well ask your question. You raise your hand or comment.
Irina, I see there are two hands.
Yes, and
by
Olena was first.
Darina and Olena.
Yes, and Olena, you are muted.
Так, мені б хотілося таке просте питання.
I would like to ask a very simple question, because I've heard about the families and the discrimination between the families. I mean, if there are, I mean, not discrimination, but the difference between the families. It's the family with many children, or 6 or 3 or 4 children, whether and the families could have only one child. Are we actually sort of triaging them or not? Are we flexible in this respect as well as the level of subsistence, and also there are the parents, the families where there are men, fathers, and the families without fathers? Do we take into account whether we mix these families in the group or not? If you have this experience, it will be very, very interesting for us to hear about it, and I will be very grateful for that.
Yeah. In our experience, we invite families, complete families. So if there's a father who wants to join, yes, more than welcome. And we really emphasize that. If he's the only father, and it's really important, fathers that are absent because of valid reasons versus a father who's present, then you may want to think about it. But with regard to age groups, children have their parallel program. So if you have toddlers, then someone needs to have to organize a subgroup of toddlers and take care of these activities. If there's 6 children in a wide age range, you need to see, for the composition of the whole group, are there sufficient children of every age group that can offer the program together? So you're flexible, but you need to make a decision every time and again to make it a good experience for the families. We had groups in the Dutch community where refugees recently resettled, and half of them were with couples. So both parents were there, and half of them were mothers alone. We never had a father alone. That could be the case as well. That would not be that would be as welcome as any other composition, but but I do think, and in one of the asylum seeker centers where we offered the program at that time, one father came the first time. He wanted to check out where his wife was going. Then he stayed away for 3 times. And then he heard his wife being enthusiastic about the groups and other fathers taking part. And then he joined for the remainder of the program. So you never know. It could also be in-out for the beginning. Age groups of children is an important aspect to think about. You don't want to get children, hang around and not being addressed.
Yeah, and we have a question, a comment from Darina.
Я буду українською. Ось казали, що
It was mentioned here that it is not desirable to create groups which will include the families of the military servicemen. I mean, to make homogeneous group of the military servicemen, that they understand each other too well. But I am working with the groups of these military servicemen, and if this group actually is created, whether it is possible to work with them.
Yes,
that there is no
Yes.
opportunity to, you know, split them and to join them to other representatives of
Yeah.
other groups.
Oh, I'm really happy that you posed that question because I don't want to be misunderstood. I do find it very important to also organize groups for military themselves or for their family members. I think we worked with family groups of military, and that was really helpful. Marloes knows more about these groups, I think. What I was referring to was a long-term group of only veterans. And there we had the trouble. It was a psychotherapeutic group, and there we observed that that the men among each other, it was, I think, 20 years after their missions, they well, they were more or less comfortable with their PTSD diagnosis, and they didn't feel the urge to change, and that was, I think, a problem within these groups. But it's not to say that this is happening in every military group. No, I would just emphasize that this is a very important target group, I would say, especially in places where they are so much highly involved in conflict. And no, I would recommend you to do work with veterans and with military.
Darina, I wonder whether you have heard the answer for your questions, or you have any maybe additional question, or maybe you can share like your concerns.
Дякую, я отримала відповідь,
Thank you.
зрозуміло.
I've got the answer. I've got what you meant. Thank you.
Okay, great to hear that. And I see in the chat there is a question or request whether there is a manual or any related literature that can be recommended to read about this approach and framework.
Yeah. I think in general there is a difference between the therapeutic use of multifamily therapy, and I think we're now talking about more early intervention preventive groups of families bringing together and empowering them. The Yes I Can message. And for the first category there, I would recommend the book by Aya Ase and Michael Schultz, but this is therapy. And for the latter, we will share a manual that is translated in Ukrainian during our training. And other than that, we've written a manual for Arcan International that was based on our West Bank experiences, and we have a book in Dutch, but that won't make you happy.
Unless it is translated.
Unless it will be translated. And that is called, the title is Good Parenting in Difficult Times. Our aim really is to support parenting even in different contexts, but even though, when times are very difficult, we do believe that you, as a parent, you have an opportunity day in, day out to be significant for your child.
Yeah. And I'm grateful that, so now we're going back to the first slide, or first slides that you have presented, Trudy, about the transgenerational transference of trauma, right? Because taking care of parenting skills and and strength and resilience of the parents, we prevent transmission of the trauma to next generation. That's the idea. And I just wanted to let you know that we have translated Yael Danieli inventory to Ukrainian. It will be published like end of this month in our journal, and we encourage to test it and to use it, and give us feedback how it should be adapted, because we faced the problem with so we adapted this to current situation, war situation in Ukraine. But if you would ask any family in Ukraine, you would find there as well previous traumas like repressions, famine, Second World War, Chernobyl, so many. And so this is the like a pilot, and then we would like to add more layers to this. But this is work in progress.
Yeah, it's so important. I'm aware that these layers are there, are doing their work within families. Yeah, it's so important to have a good understanding of ways to foster resilience. Yeah, and how parents are doing that, because they are doing that.
Exactly. And we were talking these days with our colleagues from ARC Centrum 45 with the Child and Parents Units, right? I hope this is the proper name. And they have highlighted that we should take into consideration a cultural as well a layer, because I would say for Eastern Europe and for Ukraine, it's the way how like I was raised. So my mother and father were always at work, and like my grandparents took care of me, or even I did it myself from the very early beginning of my life. And they were very proud that I can read myself fairy tales when I was 3 years old, and go and sleep myself. But this is how like everybody, at least at my generation, many of children were raised like that. And you mentioned as well that in the Dutch culture, it's the opposite. It's not like that. And then when two worlds are meeting, then people from outside, they might say, okay, this is a maltreatment, this is a neglect. So we need, as well in the groups, probably in the training, discuss what are the cultural norms, and like where is the line that like it's not okay. Okay, this is not okay, and like how can we support this, and as well highlight that families will not be punished if they kind of have no resources to support these children. On the contrast, they will learn that this is probably the stress itself that make them less available emotionally for their children, and being and receiving support and looking for support is, as you said, the most important job.
This is wonderful that you are sharing this, Irina, with us, because that is so important, to work in every cultural context, and that is very, every group has its own cultural context, but the stories about resilient coping and parenting are made and are created from within the group. Within the group, you can ask, okay, this happened, but what do you think about it? Is this also what you want for the next generation? And if you don't want it, if you want it in another way, how can you do that? So without a judgment, it's non-judgmental. That's why I said the facilitator is, trained to sit on his or her own hands. You're there to facilitate group interaction. The wisdom and experience is among the parents in the group. And the cultural differences make it so interesting. And your task is to invite, to elicit all these experiences, all these stories, all these values also. Because I think parenting is very much related also to acting according to your values. So yeah, not to make it too philosophical, but I'd like to stress that it's adaptive for every context, and non-judgmental is also very important principle, like in family work, and I think all our mental health work.
Yeah,
it's important, but it's extremely important here.
Yeah, I see that like we are about to finish. We have 3 minutes left, and I wonder whether, yes, so time is running.
Yeah.
I wonder whether we would have any last comments from Julia or Marloes before we will finish. Any last thoughts from your side? Or maybe you can recommend as well any literature, because like I see the requests. So please do share names of those books, you know, in the chat or by email. So more resources are welcome.
Yeah, I was really thinking about, I don't know her name anymore, but the one who, someone asked, how do I make sure that families attend? And I was thinking it's also about make it practical, make it in a way that they are able to attend, because you have to organize yourself as a family. So make sure it's on a day or in a time that is suitable for most families, because it's also a struggle how to make sure you're able to attend, that it's nearby, and that it's has nice facilities, and that, well, sometimes children have to skip school a bit, so make sure you make it practically easy to attend. I think this is very important.
Which may be hazardous in certain circumstances, but yeah, the attempt should be there.
Yeah,
make it accessible.
Yeah, you make sure it is accessible. Yeah.
Okay, Julia.
Well, I think that also I would also emphasize the importance of the cultural factors, because in some cultures, parents are more open to support than in another, or easier talk about their troubles than another. And in each culture, there is a key how to open the door for the parents, and which key fits in the lock. And I think that is something which is sometimes also process of searching the right way.
Okay, so thank you so much for our presenter, Trudy, to you and to Julia and Marloes, and of course to all of those who asked questions. We're not shy to write them in the chat or raise a hand. It's always a shared experience. Yeah, we co-create this.